Welcome back to the discussion, National Security, Defense, and Educating Our Future Industry Leaders, sponsored by George Mason University on Federal News Radio, part of Federal News Network. My guest today is retired Vice Admiral John Cotton, part of the U.S. Navy. He's the Executive MBA Adjunct Faculty at the School of Business for George Mason University, and I'm your moderator, Scott Maucione. So one of the things that we teased before we came to this, this past break was the JEDI contract, and I think maybe if you could just tell us about the importance of this contract, what it means not only for the military, but for the future of technology in the military.
Sure, and of course, when this first was mentioned, folks in the Pentagon, it was like, oh my gosh, we're going to put our secrets in the cloud.
Yeah.
What could go wrong? In the Executive MBA course, we do a Harvard case study on the Amazon Web Services and just how important that was to Amazon. And of course, they had excess capacity and they started leasing it out to others. In fact, Netflix uses Amazon Web Services, and yet they compete for content as well. So it's interesting how that goes.
Yeah.
But the warrior of tomorrow is going to have to get information now. And it can't be back to the base, to a fixed database that has to be updated. It's going to have to be cloud-based. And then you're going to have the security to get to and from it. And that's where your secrets will be and your information that you need. So we're going to have to do this. The contract was decided, it was protested. In a month, we'll find out what's going to happen. Perhaps it'll be Amazon Web Services, but this will be very, very important for defense to make this work right. I also like it because it's an all-service solution and not just one service at a time, because right now they're very siloed. I remember way back when Secretary Rumsfeld was first briefed on the Navy Marine Corps intranet.
Yeah.
And his first question was, why is it only the Navy Marine Corps? Why isn't it always defense? Change is slow sometimes. Here we are 15 years later, but we're maybe finally going to get this right, and it'll be good for the warfighter, it'll be good for all the services to do that.
What does it mean for the companies that get this contract, or the company, and how's that going to affect the whole landscape too?
Yeah, exactly. So the train is leaving the station, and this is a big train, $10 billion contract for 10 years. You need to be on this train. So of course you want to be the prime that wins, but in many cases when a prime wins, it's the competitors and their workforces that sometimes team or partner with that winner to make this work. And we talked about in the last segment about the number of people that can do this, that are just qualified, have a clearance, that can get on this. So I think that's what's going to happen here, that there's going to be one clear winner, but a lot of these people are going to be working on this contract for many years.
Right, and it's going to be, this is the first one. They're saying it's going to be multi-vendor eventually over the time, right?
And if this is done successfully with DoD, just imagine the other branches of government going the same way. So I think there's going to be plenty of business for the few companies that can do this.
Let's kind of stay on that topic with business at this point. So Raytheon is now doing a merger with another big company. It's going to be the second or third biggest defense company, I believe.
Yes.
So what does that also mean for, we've had these big six or big 10, however you want to chop it off, of defense companies. They keep getting smaller. How does that affect the Defense Department and also the contractors that you work with?
Well, just like in government, where the biggest expense you have is manpower, the same thing is in the civilian industries. And as we have fewer contracts and they're spread out a little further, these companies bid for these contracts, may or may not win. And as the profitability is squeezed by Pentagon negotiators, there's less profitability. So some companies have to look at what we need to do in the future. As I was telling you, I read an Aviation Week article last night about how the two CEOs called each other and said, hey, if we combine, we'd have less corporate infrastructure, we'd have less costs. Together, we can compete better than we can separately. So sometimes it was the cost structure of the companies, particularly the corporate structure, that drives some of these mergers.
How does that work into things like OTAs, other transaction authorities, prototyping, fail fast? That's the whole new defense culture. Does that cost more money for private companies when they're trying to put these prototypes out?
A private company, this is just general numbers that I can tease you, this is what I can tell pilots, for example, so they can understand things. To be profitable, a company needs to make about 6% profit. If they're making 15% profit, they're doing very well. And if that's your segment, you'll probably be CEO someday. So the Pentagon tries to drive about single-digit profitability, but that also leans out the amount of money that a company can spend on research and development, or the IRAD funds. And increasingly, the Pentagon would like to direct what a company uses its IRAD funds for, So maybe it aligns with some of the technologies the Pentagon thinks it needs. But sometimes company does its own research and comes up with some great big idea, takes it to the Pentagon, they go, whoa, where did that come from?
Right.
So there's a give and take on how much a company is allocated to use as part of their profitability for these IRAD things. Now, rapid prototyping, we talked about last segment, that's the OTA, that's really important, is to be able to go direct, get something done, get it to the warfighter. And probably the people that do that best are down at Special Operations Command, SOCOM, because they've got warfighters that need something now, and they've got a shortened process, can buy those things. And that's really the envy of all the services, being able to do that.
What makes these non-traditional companies more exciting to the Defense Department compared to the traditional ones like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon?
Well, I think some of those big programs, a big aircraft program like Joint Strike Fighter, a ship like an aircraft carrier, where it really takes years to make happen. This rapid prototyping is a product now. There is a requirement in the field. A 2-star or 3-star says they need it. How quickly can you get it with existing gear? It's kind of commercial off the shelf. So you're satisfying the customer immediately. A lot more reward, psychic income, getting that done fast.
So do you think that it's taking those products that those non-traditional companies have and making them into a warfighting capability, or is it the other way around, that you ask them to make a warfighting capability?
It's both.
Yeah.
And there's very few things that are dual use, especially hardware-wise. But increasingly, cyber is so important, the whole cyber domain, and getting that kind of technology and those programs, those are some things we're rapid acquiring also. And it's from those small companies with the good technology.
And so that's where Google comes in, that's where Uber comes in, right? That technology that they have for GPS or to talk to cars or those kind of things, they can use that exact same stuff for a tank. Right?
And also, I've got to plug this too, as the former Chief of Navy Reserve, I said we really had no reserve at all. We had people who reserved our country. Mm-hmm. So we've got requirements now, particularly in the cyber domain, and there's a lot of people out there who would love to become a reservist, someone who reserves our country, that has that technology, already has that clearance, knows how to make that work. Age shouldn't make a difference. It shouldn't be 40 or younger. We have 40, 50, 60-year-olds that can serve. We've hired doctors at age 60, we've hired doctors in their 70s. We're going to be doing this, I think, for cybernauts in the future. Yeah. So a whole new look at human resources and how we get people to man our forces.
Admiral John Cotton, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
I'd like to thank again our guest, retired Vice Admiral John Cotton of the U.S. Navy. He's the Executive MBA Adjunct Faculty at the School of Business for George Mason University. I'm your moderator, Scott Maucione, and you're listening to Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search George Mason.